This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803 427 5944.
But yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. Excited to do this with you. I know we talked last time. We touched on some things. We've already touched on some things here that I feel like we're going to get into, have a good conversation. So if you just want to maybe introduce yourself and preface the conversation, say who you are, what you do, anything you want to share.
Absolutely. So my name is Daniel Hauge. I am an entrepreneur from Denmark. I am absolutely obsessed with personal development and designing a world-class life, maximizing my potential in the areas of life that matter to me. And then with time, I decided to share some of those things in PDFs, in videos, stuff like that. And that ended up being the company that I now run today, which is we sell ebooks, courses, and some personal trainings on designing an optimized life. I'm sure we'll get further into what that means and how we build it, but we help online entrepreneurs design a life that is free from stress, burnout, overwhelm, and yeah, I'm loving it.
Okay, so you're an entrepreneur yourself.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that. So what, like, so you is this the business that you currently are working on? Is that what you started up? You just started this business on how to help people, I guess, through online.
Yeah, so if you want the long story on that, you can
Okay.
absolutely have that one. But I started life in a very different way to most people. I had a rough past, very different upbringing, very different teenage years. We're talking crime, we're talking some drug abuse, we're talking not going to school, we're just talking off the track completely. And that's how I lived for most of my life. And then eventually it started getting really bad. It started getting to the point where I felt like this is not going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
This is not gonna be a good thing for me. Um, I remember my friends and I we were hanging out, and one of my friends came up with this fun idea that we should try and guess how old we were gonna be in life. And some people said, "Oh, I think I'm gonna be 80. I think I'm gonna be 75, whatever." And they asked me, and I completely killed the mood, which was my intention, but just immediately off the top of my head, I said 21. And
Oh
everyone was
wow.
like, no, 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 what do you mean, Daniel? I'm like, there's no way I make it past 21. There's no way. I think that was kind of a wake up call for me. And I felt like I received this kind of dilemma, which was I'm either going to continue down this path where just about everything in my life is bad. We're talking my health, my social life, my career path, everything, or I'm going to turn things around.
Hmm.
But one thing I was crystal clear on was that if I was going to turn this thing around, if I was going to give life an actual chance, an actual shot, I was sure as shit not going to do it just to be maybe a factory worker for the rest of my life, or being, unhealthy and just struggling my entire life. If I was gonna turn things around, I wanted everything. I wanted everything. I wanted the health. I wanted the career, the money, the relationships. I wanted everything. So that was kind of my dilemma, which was either we give up on life or we build the craziest goddamn life that has ever been built, right? And fortunately, I decided to give it a shot, and so I started. I started wishing for personal development information for birthdays and Christmas. I would wish for books and video trainings and stuff like that, and but mostly books. And I would just read and read and read. And I got a job as a cashier, which I was working like 10, 11 hours a day, and then I was working oftentimes as a dishwasher on the weekends and at night, and I was just working my ass off so that I could earn money so that I could pour that into studying personal growth. How was I going to build this person that I want to build and this life that I was going to build? And it just, I got so obsessed. It's not like I was passionate about it or I was interested in it. I was absolutely obsessed with becoming the best that I could be, and I still am. And then I started realizing that building an incredible life and being the best that I could be, for me, that included some kind of entrepreneurship. I'm not sure why. I think it was because maybe 90% of the personal growth books that I was buying, there was some kind of entrepreneurship in all of them, and all of the authors were entrepreneurs in some way, right? So I figured, okay, entrepreneurship has to be a part of this. And then I started studying that as well. I still did my personal growth and stuff like that, but I started studying some entrepreneurship. How does it work? How do I build a product?
Mhm.
How do I help people? How do I get paid? All of that. And then those two passions and those two obsessions led me to starting to want to share some of these findings, some of these things that helped me. So I didn't invent a lot of the personal development stuff that I was sharing, but what I did was I would read a lot and I would study a lot and I would experiment a lot on myself and on my friends, my family, and I would look at what works and what doesn't. And then when there were things that worked, I would share them for free with people that were interested in trying them as well, right? So, and I just got amazing response. People started achieving similar results to what I've achieved with my personal growth and with my family and my friends. And then eventually I started having people from Sri Lanka and the US and Japan and whatever tell me how some of my stuff, some of my I don't want to say teachings, but some of my sharings had helped them, and I figured I was onto something here, so
Mhm.
I decided to write a book, released it on Amazon, and was fortunate enough to hit Amazon bestselling number one in three very minor like sub segments or niches, but still a bestseller, which completely blew me away. And then I kind of built the company which I'm running today, called Passion for Achievement. Kind of built that on top of my momentum with people that I was already helping for free and the book, and then it just became, and now it's what I'm doing, um, pretty much full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, you talked about so much there that there's like so many things I want to hit on. Um, I think the first you were talking about this story of just like this. It's almost like it's hard to explain to somebody who's not in the position of entrepreneurship about where that comes from. Because I've had people ask me like, "What made you want to be an entrepreneur? Like, where did that?" And it's hard to really answer that because you don't. I mean, there's factors I think that push you in that direction. Like you mentioned that you don't want to be, at a company or whatever, and like there's factors that move you to that direction. But I think something that you kind of touched on here that I see is like a reoccurring theme is like a lot of entrepreneurs, man, they don't fit into like like the normal, whatever normal society is as far as like normal career, the normal lifestyle. I mean, they like, it's almost like they color outside the lines of the box. You know what I mean? You think about all the great entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all these guys, like they thought in a very different way than like what most people think. And they had to make their company or their product or whatever succeed. But the reason I bring that up is because, if that is not, if that energy or that thought process is not harnessed into the right direction, it can very easily go in the wrong direction, which I think is where you said you kind of started out was maybe on the wrong direction, but you realized somewhere along the way, this sort of passion, this sort of desire, and you kind of push that into what sounds like the right direction. And that's a I don't know. That's a common thing that I hear from entrepreneurs because it's just, it's also too, man, like and I don't know anything about the education system where you guys are, but here in America, like the education system is not set up to motivate entrepreneurs or any type of creative person really. I mean, I don't want to say set up, but it seems like it benefits the people who kind of perpetuate the education system, like those people who go to college and those people who continue to pursue their education. It seems like at least for the American education system, that's what that's the people who kind of benefit the most from the way the education system is set up. Because like most entrepreneurs, man, there's plenty of entrepreneurs who were like in high school who were like D students, C students, that was just not really their thing. But you mentioned something too about like I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but the message I got was overcoming yourself. You felt like you were this person, or you were headed towards this thing. You had a certain thought process, and then you changed that. So when we talk about, like, we can talk all day about overcoming adversity, overcoming struggles and things like that. But I think the hardest thing about self improvement is overcoming that version of yourself. Because I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. And it sounds like you got, kind of familiar with that thought process. Can I ask you, like, when you said, so your friends were talking about how old you were going to be, and you said 21. How old were you at the time, do you think, when you said that?
I was in my teens, obviously, but I think sometimes it blends a little bit for me, because I was like super depressed and off track for just about my entire, well, at least the tricky part is that when I started doing this personal development thing, it wasn't like, from one day to the other day, I was
Right.
just completely fixed. So sometimes people will be confused, because I may say that already in, when I was maybe 17, 18, I started with the personal development stuff. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
surprised when I didn't say that I was also depressed maybe at 18 or something like that, right? But anyway, to answer your questions, I was probably 17 at the time,
Okay.
probably.
And
Yeah,
how old are you now, if you don't mind me
24.
asking?
24.
Okay. Well, congratulations. You made it past what you one day thought was your max. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're out here doing the damn thing, man. Um, yeah, so you said something too after that. You were talking about overcoming yourself. You said you were talking about sharing what you learn. I think that's a big part of it, man, is sharing things that you learn with other people, because I think there's so many different avenues and there's so many different experiences we can have. Like, everybody's unique and we kind of have our own thing. But I think and I've had people on the podcast talk to me about this very thing. But when you have somebody who like experiences something, kind of similar to you, and they can share like their experience based on your experience. Because if you're going through something, man, like, if you feel like you're the only one, or if you feel like nobody's going to understand, that significantly changes the weight of whatever it is that you're going through. Anyways, I was just going to say, if you're kind of taking like what you learn and your experience and sharing it with other people, I think if everybody did some version of that, I think humanity as a whole would like would would what would be we would have like an explosive evolution in humanity if everybody just did a little bit of that.
Absolutely. And I think people are more, there's a way higher chance that they're actually going to listen and, like you said, relate and take action, if it's more of a, I'm sharing what worked for me, instead of a, I'm telling you you should do this, right? So that's something for me I've experienced a lot. If I tell people, whether this is in my ads or my sales calls or whatever, and I say you should do this, you should do that, people are like, you look like a 12-year-old, right? First of all, and how could you possibly tell me how I should live my life or whatever? But when I say things more like, I do nothing else but do my best to either build my own life as best as I possibly can, and help clients build their lives as best as they possibly can, and 95% of the things that I'm testing are not working, or they are not worth it, or whatever, I'm willing to share the 5% of the books and the courses and the whatever that truly worked for me and my family and friends and my clients. Would you like to see what that was? I think people are way more inclined to listen than compared to if I were to stand up and just pronounce myself a guru and tell everyone that now I'm the expert with 30 years of experience. I don't have 30 years of experience, so just to your point as well, with the sharing, I think Gary
Mm-hmm.
Vaynerchuk talks about this, that it's better to document than create. Certainly, unless you're some super known figure. It's better to document what works than trying to reinvent the wheel,
Mhm.
which is what I've been trying.
Yeah, well, you may not have that 30 years of experience, man, but what you do have is uh you have people around you that I feel like you could reach just because I don't know, like, so I just turned 30 this year. I'm only, 6 years or so older than you. But I remember when I was like 18, 19, 20-ish in that time frame, man, like everything was just so different because you're just out of high school, people are kind of doing their own thing, they're going to, their own route. Um, and I just feel like when you have somebody that's like close to your own age, that's telling you things like this, it is to go back to what you just said about how you can relate to it. It's different from, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but it's different from a person who is maybe like twice your age telling you the exact same thing. If it comes from somebody who's at least, like you in your early mid 20s, it changes it when it comes from a source like that. Because it's like I just remember at that age, it's like you almost expect people, double your age to say a certain thing to you. But when somebody like one of your peers are saying this thing, it changes it dramatically. Um,
Yeah,
so outside of business, man, like, do you have like are you into fitness? Do you have a gym routine that you do?
absolutely. I love weightlifting, which for a bunch of years has been the main thing I've been doing. I was doing a little bit too much of it. I think I was doing like 2 hours a day at least,
Mm,
6 7 times per week, and I just wanted to. I just wanted the physique, right? It wasn't really for health reasons or anything like that in the beginning, but so now I feel like I've matured a little bit in that regard. Now I do it. I still want the physique, but I also want the longevity. I also want the energy. I want the health. I want all of that. So now, usually, what I try to do is I try to do. Well, I don't try to do. What I'm doing is 3 weightlifting sessions per week, and then 3. I do a lot of martial arts.
mm.
So that's MMA, Muay Thai, all of that. I struggled a little bit with getting my cardio in. I just think it's way more fun to get it in a sparring session or something like that. So that's how I get my cardio, and then I do the weightlifting. Sometimes I'll go for a run or something, but usually that's the bulk of my routine.
Yeah, dude, fighting shape is so different from cardio. Like, it's so different. I've for probably about 6 months or so now, I've been training MMA, Muay Thai, Jiu Jitsu, a little bit of kickboxing. It's a completely different experience, man. Like, and I tell people, if even if you're looking at it just from a fitness standpoint, jujitsu is probably the best workout I have ever had in my life, like cardio workout. Uh, and it teaches you a lot about your body, man, just the body awareness. Like, you become, you realize that you can move in more ways than you think, um, it might be kind of tough to start out with because, you're getting dinged up and everything, but, how long have you been training martial arts?
Well, on and off, my entire life. I started
Oh, okay.
karate when I was 7 years old or something. I remember I wanted to be a ninja when I was like
Mm,
really young. I wanted to be a ninja. I'd seen it on TV or whatever, and I told my father that father, I'm going to be a ninja, and I would like to practice it a couple of times per week, just like I'm practicing soccer and whatever. And he said, I'm not sure you can do that. I think you'd have to be like in China or whatever, but I don't think you can do that in Denmark. So he found the next best thing, which was karate, and then I started doing that, and then I just with time I started moving over to the more um, could you say more modern martial arts, but the
mm.
more practical maybe, right? So Muay Thai, MMA, grappling. I don't do jiu-jitsu. I haven't tried it, but I should. But I do a lot of no gi with yeah
Yeah.
grappling
You,
stuff.
you
So
said you said you haven't tried jujitsu yet?
I haven't tried jiu-jitsu with the G and everything, but I've done a lot
Oh,
of
okay.
grappling. A lot of grappling.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I usually do no gi, man. I don't do the gi either. But it's completely different. And it's like too like when you combine them like into the mixed martial arts, I think that's really when it becomes I don't want to say practical because each discipline is practical in their own way, But it's like when you combine it into the mixed martial arts, that's when it really, I mean, because like some of those guys who train like consistently and been training for a long time, if you're training MMA with them, they'll be like, look, you can do this in jiu-jitsu, don't do this in MMA. It's not going to work. And this, you know,
Exactly.
there's some things that don't work, but no, man, you're talking about overcoming yourself, dude. You know, we could talk about getting outside of your comfort zone, putting yourself in a place that's really uncomfortable. I don't know anything that's going to do that like martial arts will. I mean, like the gym, if you go to the gym and if you're going to the gym and that gets you outside of your comfort zone, that is 100% okay. And I love that. But when you put yourself out there on the mats with somebody, and like, especially if you're new and you're trying to learn this thing, dude, it's like I don't know anything that like builds confidence and humbles you at the same time like martial arts does.
Oh, that's such a good description. Builds confidence and humbles you in the same session. That's an incredible way to explain it. That's exactly what it does. I feel like a king, a warrior when I leave a 1 or 2 hour session of whether that's Muay Thai or MMA or whatever. But also I feel so like, appreciative of life. I feel calm. I think a lot of people, including some of my family members, they see it as violence, and I guess in a way it is. But sometimes it feels like the opposite. It feels like, I don't know, I'm just so at peace, so calm afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
think it's going back to what we talked about earlier is harnessing that. I mean, it is a violent thing, but like what makes it a skill is the ability to be violent and choose not to be violent. You know, I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is.
100%.
He talks about,
I saw his talk in Denmark last year.
I'm actually going to see him in May of this year. He's coming to a local city near me, so that's going to be interesting. Um,
Nice.
but he talks about this, man. You know, just kind of harnessing that energy. You know, having the ability to be dangerous and choosing not to be dangerous. Because that's a thing that I've noticed with like a lot of these guys who've been training for a long time, man. They're very like calm people because I guess it's because they know that if they had to use it, they could. But I think you're right. Though. I don't think it's. I mean, I do know that people see it as something that's violent. A lot of people think if they put their children in martial arts, they're going to become bullies or whatever. But I think the exact opposite is true. I mean, I think that like if they're in martial arts, the probability they're going to be a bully goes down tremendously. And be bullied, like you know, they're probably not going to be bullied because they have that self confidence. But but yeah, man, that's kind of what I was hitting on earlier about with the entrepreneurship. It's just like having that inner. I don't want to say darkness because I don't see it as necessarily a bad thing, but it's having that energy and then doing something with it. You know, put it in an area, um, and I mean, and I've talked to. I had a guy coming here. He's been on here several times. Carlos Briganti. He's a black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt. He's a taekwondo black belt. He was talking about how you can like when we get on the mat and you go compete with somebody or go spar with somebody or whatever, like yeah, you're facing this other guy or this other person, but it's like it's really you against you because even if you've been training for a while, man, you know this other guy's been training for a while or whatever, you're going to have a little bit of anxiety probably, and especially if you're new to this thing, you're going to be like nervous or whatever. But if you go out there, you get over that thing. He's got a really good point about this, man. His episode, and so, but like you get out there, it's like you against you. You're proving yourself to yourself. You're overcoming that fear, and it's like even if you don't win the sparring session or whatever it is, you still won that battle with yourself because you got out there and did the hard thing. You know, I mean, there's just so many different
Absolutely.
lessons I feel like you can take from this.
I am currently in a mastermind of sorts with a guy who is absolutely brilliant at business. He's doing the same revenue per day than that most people are doing, and like in a year maybe he's so talented
Wow.
at business, and he's really kind of a mentor for me. And I'm very skeptical with business people. My email inbox explodes every day by people selling me the next big business thing. You know, everyone wants to be a business guru, but this guy I respect a lot. And when I started this mastermind, when I joined this mastermind, I should say, someone asked him a great question, which was, "What should we be asking you that no one is asking you?"
Hmm.
And he said, for the last 17 years, less than 10 people has asked him this question he was about to tell us, and it's the number one question, which is essentially, how do you do hard shit? Like, how do you have a major setback in the morning and then you still get on that sales call at 3 p.m. and you crush it? How do you go on podcasts like this and maybe you get declined the first 70 outreaches you do, and then you still send that outreach 71, right? You just, how do you do hard shit? How do you do these things even though it's hard? And I think honestly that's something martial arts will help you with a lot. It's like, first of all, usually the warm up and the conditioning in a martial arts club is extremely brutal, more so than any other sport I've ever done. So that in and of itself teaches you to do hard shit. But also just things like sparring. If you're sparring against someone who's good at punching you in the face, like that is something you gotta like hype yourself up a little bit, and you gotta stay calm, but you still gotta be on alert, and you gotta be there. And then
Right.
afterwards, you can say, "I did that hard thing." And so I think martial arts, and I think weightlifting does that as well to a degree, but martial arts does it in a great way as well.
Well, I think both of them, what they have in common is the discipline.
Yep.
It's the discipline to stay consistent with it. I don't know if you know who Andrew Huberman is.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah, so he was. Do you know who David Goggins is?
Yeah, love him.
Yeah, so David Goggins was on Andrew Huberman's podcast recently, and they were talking about there's an area of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex, and this area grows when you continuously do things that you don't want to do. Like they say, if there's like someone who's exceptionally fit, this brain area is bigger. Somebody who lives longer, this brain area is bigger. Somebody who's maybe not fit, this brain area is smaller. So what this means is that like this can be seen as like the discipline muscle in the brain. Like when you do things that you don't necessarily want to do, I mean, you could like the outcome of it, but you don't necessarily want to do it. Like this part gets bigger. And I think, man, we talk about entrepreneurship or even a fitness program, anything in life, I feel like that we build that has value to it. People talk about motivation and all that kind of thing, but here's the thing, man, motivation like comes and goes. Like you can't depend on motivation, because if you do things when you're motivated, like the guy who is disciplined is going to beat you every day of the week, because you can't, like the very definition of motivation is the feeling of wanting to do something. But I mean, I'm sure like especially in entrepreneurship, anything that we're talking about, fitness, entrepreneurship, martial arts, like there's going to be more times that you don't want to do it probably than you do want to do it. But you still have to do those things. You have to wake up at a certain time. You have to make those sales calls. You have to do all the work behind the scenes, because that's where 95% of the work is. But you have to do these things consistently, and I think if we master the art of discipline, I think that is one of the most important things we can learn in our life, because you have to be able to do the things that you don't want to do when you don't want to do them.
Absolutely, I 100% agree, and that's one of the main objectives with everything I do for clients, is that we want to move away from relying on motivation and even willpower. I think willpower has its time and place. We can talk about that if you want, but I want to rely on it as little as possible as well. It's exactly like motivation. I would much rather rely on things like discipline, but also on systems, on routine, on momentum and stuff like that. And generally, we can talk about that as well. I like to steer away, when possible, from having to make the decision. I would like to avoid the decision. What I mean by that is, we can get further into that. But just the overarching thing is, the more it's routine, the more the activity, whether that's going to the gym or working hard or reading a book or whatever it is, the more it's a system, the more it's routine, the more it's a natural part of you, the more it's discipline you're running on, and momentum, the less there's a decision. You're not going, should I brush my teeth tonight or not? It's just something you do because it's just It's just there. So
Right.
it's not taxing in the same way compared to if you're asking yourself, should I eat the cake or the salad? Even if you end up eating the salad, which congratulations, that's nice. But I still believe it took time, it took some energy, it was taxing in a way. And I would like to actually avoid that by just having a system that just immediately makes the salad the natural next thing to do.
So you said you were talking about the decision. What do you mean by that? You
Yeah.
said what did you say? Not making the decision? I can't remember exactly how you worded it.
Yeah, so I have basically what I'm saying is I would like for as many of my progression activities, right? So let's say I want to progress with my health, my business, and so progression activities could be going to the gym, or it could be crafting a new product for my website or whatever. I would like as many of these things as possible to be something I just do. Something that's
Hmm.
just a part of a routine, a part of a system. I have something I call the 100 fights, and I think this will be interesting now that you do martial arts as well. I write about this in my book. I call it the 100 fights. And the idea is take the best fighter in the world or the worst fighter. I don't care. Take any fighter. Could be me, could be you. And have him or her fight 100 times per day in the ring. Okay, 100
Mm-hmm.
fights per day. I don't care how good a fighter you are going to lose some of those fights.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you lose 10, maybe you lose 80, but I don't know anyone who would who would win all 100 fights if you were to fight 100 times per day, every day. It's very, very difficult. It's probably impossible. But that's how most people go through life. They wake up, and the first second, they are fighting themselves. Should I snooze or should I not? Maybe they
Hmm.
snooze, and then 5 minutes later, should I snooze again or should I not? I told myself, and I actually told my sister as well, that I was gonna go running in the mornings. Should I put on my running shoes now or not? Should I drink a glass of water or not? Should I have some? I know, especially in the U.S., you guys have a lot of like sugar cereal and stuff like that. Should I have a bowl of
Unfortunately.
that? Yeah, or should I have something that would be good for me? And so the average person, the normal person, makes 100 of these decisions a day with everything. Should I eat this or that? Should I go for a walk or not? Should I walk for 20 minutes or 25 minutes? Everything is a decision. Everything is a fight. And even if you win, so even if you spend 20 minutes arguing with yourself, should I go running or not? And then you end up running, so you actually win, right? You win the fight. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
congratulations, that's awesome, and I respect that. And yeah, good on you. But that's still 20 minutes, and it's still also a lot of energy you spent, or wasted, in my opinion, trying to make that happen. Wouldn't it be cooler if it just happened without there being a decision? Much like,
Mm-hmm.
for many people, brushing the teeth. It's just,
Right.
you don't have to fight yourself for an hour before you brush your teeth. It's something I do. What I'm trying to do with my clients is I want there to be as few of these fights as possible in the things that matter to them. So if someone came to me and he said, I'm big on clarity. We can talk about that as well. But I want people to know what it is that they want in life. I want them to know which areas of their lives are important to them and how they would like that area of their lives to look like and how that can be accomplished and all of that. Clarity is huge. And then we have all of these activities that progress towards these ideal destinations, whatever, right? Whether that's
Mm-hmm.
weightlifting or it's drinking more water or it's whatever. I want these things to be automatic. I want them to just be a part of you. I want it to be, I want you to get to the point where when you wake up tomorrow and I'm there in your room for some reason, I promise I won't be, but I'm saying how much should I pay you not to drink that glass of water? You've been drinking it every day now for the last 7 months and you feel
Mm-hmm.
great when you do it and you know it's a huge part of your health routine. How much should I pay you not to drink that glass of water? I want you to say $10,000 or something, right? I want you to feel so bad. I want your world to just be weird without that glass of water, because it's a part of you, it's routine, and you have some momentum and all of that. So, and I don't know if that's just me. You talk about David Goggins. He's incredible with things like willpower and stuff like that. I don't have that much willpower. I honestly don't. But still, I'm in great shape. I have my dream career. I have my dream relationship. I started this podcast off saying that I decided that one day I would have everything. And while I don't have that yet on paper, perhaps, I honestly feel like I have everything I could possibly dream about. And it didn't happen with willpower. It didn't happen with motivation. It happened with crystal clear clarity, and then crystal clear systems that I knew would consistently progress me toward my ideal, towards my vision. And then I made those systems an integrated part of me, so that there's no decision. That's what I mean with it.
Man, that is such a good point. That's a really good point, actually. Because I think you're right. If we have these continuous battles with ourselves all day, every day, most of us are not going to be able to sit there and fight every single one of those battles. And there's probably going to be some things that, yes, we do lose and we do give into. But what you're saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, what you're saying is, don't even have a decision about this. Like, forget the decision process. Just make this part of your everyday, every other day, whatever it is, everyday routine. Because it's like you said, you're exactly right. Most people don't have to have a discussion or a negotiation with themselves about brushing their teeth or something simple like that. It's just part of their day. And I find this, in my personal routine, man, where I see this come into play a lot is, so I do a cold plunge, an ice bath in the morning. It's I do 43 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know. I think Celsius, I think that's around 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. I don't know. I think it might be 5. It might be a little bit higher than that. I don't know. It's so I can look. Well, I'll look it up in a little bit on the break. Anyways, it's 43 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that's what I do in the morning, but it's like, I don't really give myself an option for that. If I tell myself I'm going to do this on this day, I mean, that's just what it is. That's just part of the schedule that day. And yes, it might suck. I might not feel like it, but I mean, like what you're saying, if you don't, like, the decision is out of it. It's not about like whether or not we're making a decision here. It's about, I guess it is more like a schedule, like having a schedule with yourself. If you're telling yourself, hey, I'm going to do this regardless of if you feel like it or not. And I've never heard anybody say that before, man, about, having those battles with yourself. But that's a really good point. That is a really good point, because we can't, I don't know a single person who's going to have all these battles with themselves on a daily basis and win every single time. And if you do, you're probably going to be so mentally drained that every other area of your life is probably going to suffer,
Exactly. And then that's where you're going to run into family members and friends that will look at you and see that you're exhausted and you're pushing yourself too much. But that's not what's happening. It's just that you're fighting yourself on things you didn't really need to fight yourself on, right? And that's when people will call you fanatical, because, okay, so you can't eat that, or you can't. If it's just a natural part of you, it's so much easier. So to sum it up, in my estimation, the only way you can win 100 fights per day is if the opponent doesn't show up, right? If it's just, you just win by default. That's what I try and do. And also, to your point there, you may win some of the fights, and when we see someone like David Goggins, he's incredible with everything, physical exercise and stuff like that. But I've seen a lot of people, and I'm not saying that's Goggins, but I've seen a lot of people that can spend 3 hours per day, 7 days per week in the gym, and pushing themselves to do hard things and maybe winning those mental battles. But no matter how hard you try, you cannot get them to spend 20 minutes per week managing their finances, right? And then maybe you have the opposite. Maybe you have some big time CPA or banker or whatever, and all he cares about in his free time is managing his personal finances and moving money around and whatever. But you can't get him to the gym. So then we can get into the topic of laziness. I do believe laziness exists, but I think oftentimes it's difficult to define, because is the bodybuilder lazy? I wouldn't say so, because he's working out 3 hours a day. That's pretty incredible. But maybe he's lazy in other areas of his life. So why is he lazy here but not here? These questions fascinate me, and I'm very interested in learning what laziness really is, what procrastination really is. Like, why does it happen, and then obviously prevent it. And yeah.
So you hit on something there, man, that I've talked about before too. You talk about the bodybuilder being in the gym for 3 hours, or the banker working on the finances for 3 hours, 12 plus hours, whatever it is. I think when we get comfortable is not the right word. When we feel like we're competent at something, when we feel like we're good at something, and we start to do that thing, even if it's something like the gym, even if it's something like a long work day, I feel like sometimes, whether consciously or not, we use that as an excuse to be productive. So I think there's a difference in being busy and being productive, and I think a lot of times what happens is we use being busy as, I mean, I know it sounds backwards, but being busy as an excuse to not do something else that we know we should do. Because I mean, if you're in the gym 3 hours, man, look, that's great and everything, but first of all, your gains have like went out the window, 90 minutes ago. I mean, anything over 90 minutes, man, I feel like you're doing too much. But if you're in there and you're in that spot and you're trying to do this thing just because you want to feel like you're productive, what else is it that you're not doing that you should be doing, that you're using that as an excuse for? You see what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so I think that's a pretty common thing too. And I think it's something that we don't want to hear, because what we think we're doing is we think we're doing the right thing. We think we're doing we're keeping the schedule with ourselves. We're being disciplined. But at the same time, if you're in the gym for 3 hours, I mean, I don't want to harp on this too much. I think you're wasting a good hour and a half of your life, maybe 2 hours, because I just feel like there's something else that we should be doing that we're maybe avoiding. And I just feel like this busy work, like I said, this busy work is a way to kind of distract ourselves, you could say, from that.
I struggled with something similar to that for the first many years I was working on Passion for Achievement, and I wasn't really seeing the results that I wanted, and I wasn't sure why, but now I am. For a big part of my work time, quote unquote, I wasn't working. So I
Mm.
had convinced myself somehow that whenever I do something related to business, then I'm working hard on building the business of my dream.
Yep.
So even if that was like reading Instagram quotes on business, or maybe it was reading a book on something related to marketing, or maybe it was refreshing my email inbox every 10 minutes, I felt like I was working, and none of those things matter. Well, maybe they can matter, but it wasn't work, right? It wasn't actively moving me forward. And I think, I would love to dive deep into hard work and whether it's the key for success or not, or all these things. Because I feel like today there's this narrative that everything is just about grind and be
Mm-hmm.
patient. And look, I'm all for hard work. Okay, I've been doing 16-hour days for a long time now, and I love it. I enjoy it. But I don't think hard work just for the sake of hard work is
Right.
what we should be doing. I feel like when we see people like Gary Vee tell us that we should just work hard. I know he's kind of diversified his message now and stuff like that, but all these Instagram hustlers and all of that, where it's like just work hard, just work hard, just work hard. Yeah, if you're in the right vehicle, doing the right thing with the right people, and everything is right, then absolutely the harder you work to a degree, the better.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I see it is, if you're in a car and you push the pedal, that's the work, that's the hard work. And you may say, okay, well, if I'm in a car and I push the pedal, then I'll move forward, and I'll move forward faster the more I push the pedal. Sure, but what if you have no wheels?
Mm-hmm.
What if your car is pointing in the opposite direction, like 180 the opposite direction? Are you still sure you're getting closer to your vision, your ideal life by working harder? I'm not so sure. And so I feel like if I'm in a car like that, instead of going from working 60 hours per week to working 80, maybe first I go put on some wheels, and maybe then I'll go, turn the car around some point in the right direction. Maybe if there's someone on my passenger seat that is completely misaligned for the road trip, maybe I throw them out and I found the right partner in there instead. And then sure, the harder you push the pedal, the better. But if it's all just about hard work, then I will just go to the local warehouse and I'll ask them if I can sweep their floors with my toothbrush. It'll probably last a couple of 100 hours, right? I'll work hard. I'll have achy knees and an achy back. I'll be dirty in my face, and I can say I worked hard. I can do an Instagram post, but no one really gained any real value from it. So, and also, like, if hard work is the key for everything, then what do you say to the cleaning lady in Bolivia working 16-hour days every day for basically no money? Should she just work harder? Or so?
Mm-hmm.
For me, to conclude, I think hard work is a necessity because just about everyone I've ever admired or seen be successful in any area of life has worked hard. But not everyone I've ever met that worked hard was successful and respectable and all that, right? So I think hard work is a necessity, but it's not the key. It's not the thing that gives you everything you want. Because, like I said, a lot of people worked hard but didn't get what they want.
Yeah.
So,
that's a really good way to put that, man. And I have a lot to say to that. Let's do this. Let's take a break just really quick, and then we'll come back to this thing. But that's a really good point. I want to pick up there. When we come back, we'll be right back. So, okay, so we were talking about the hard work, and you have a really good point there, because I think that's right. For the longest time, we have had, like, we've heard, like, work hard, work 12, 16-hour days, whatever it is. But you mentioned something that I think is worth considering, because you could be working hard in exactly the wrong direction. You know what I mean? Like, you could be working hard on something, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting that hard work in the right areas, if that makes sense. I think it needs to be, like, more focused, man, because going back to the willpower thing, going back to having those discussions with yourself, having those battles with yourself, if you work hard and you don't know where you're putting that hard work in, or if you work hard and you're like, what would you say, just like draining yourself, basically, what happens when the tank is empty? Are you going to work hard for like 2 days, 2 or 3 days straight, and then you need like 4 days to recover? Because that's like, you're basically breaking even at that point. And so I think it would be much, and I don't know, I'm not saying I have the answer whatsoever, but I think it would be much wiser for us to figure out a system that works for us, which I think is what you're talking about, a system for yourself, what works for us, and then implement that system. Because I think, like, when people were talking about whatever era this came from, about this hard work thing, when people were talking about this, I don't think they understood things like deep work, where you have like the first 3 or 4 hours or whatever it is like, if you do deep work, you can be like way more productive than you can be in an 8-hour session or whatever it is. And then like focused work, like knowing your own mentality and like where you're kind of draining yourself from. I think these, like, all these things are important. And also too, I'm not saying like David Goggins is obviously a superhuman. He's got like whatever abilities he's got, but I think what it is we look at people like that and we're say, oh, well, if I'm not doing that level of whatever, then I'm not working hard enough. But I think you have to, it sounds so simple, man, to know yourself and to like figure out your own, like what you need for yourself. It sounds simple, but I don't know how else it could be other than that, because you have to know what you can do for yourself. And this is one of the reasons I say, like, I think self-awareness can fix or at least reduce a lot of the problems we have, not just in business or entrepreneurship, but in a lot of areas in life. Self-awareness, if we have the self-awareness of ourselves, I think we can solve a lot of our issues.
absolutely, I am all for pushing myself, being disciplined, working hard when it's required, or when it's valuable. I'm all for that. So I don't want to. Yeah, I'm all for that, but it has to make sense. And I think it was Bill Gates, or don't quote me on that, but someone said, if you want something done, give it to the laziest person in the room, because he'll find an effective and smart way to do it. Right? He didn't say that word for word, but that's the idea.
Right.
And I think if you can do something in a smarter way, why not, right? If there's something, and this may sound obvious, but it doesn't seem to be when I look out in the world and I look on social media. If I can do something in an hour and all else being the same, why should I spend 2 hours? If I can do something in a smarter and more effective way. So something I came up with that I've been using with my clients is something we call a reward per effort ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And effort can be time, it can be pain, it can be money, it can be energy, it can be a sacrifice, but you have to put something into something. So whether that's going to the gym or it's doing your finances or whatever, right? It takes some effort. I want to find the activities that have the highest reward per effort ratios.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So we talked about before sweeping the floors of a warehouse with my toothbrush. That's a very low reward per effort ratio activity. And
Right.
even in fitness, things like that, if your objective was to build some big pecs, right? A big chest. If you're a man, you want to put on some muscle mass. You want to build, like even just in that little niche, there are some exercises that you can do for 30 minutes that are going to give you more results than other exercises you could be doing for 30 minutes, right? So even there,
Yep.
you can talk about rewards per effort. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, dude. Because like I don't think people understand too also that how competitive the world is. You know, like if you're trying to, especially if you're in business, like if you're in business, dude, it is so competitive. Like you have to. I think what we're talking about here is like being most efficient with your time and your effort. Like what are you going to do that is going to give you, like you said, the most results? I don't want to say for the least amount of effort, but I want to say uh, for the wisest way that you can use your effort. Because I'm sure you know about the 80-20 rule. 20% of your results, or excuse me, 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. And when I learned that, I don't know when it was, but when I heard that for the first time, I was like, man, that makes so much sense, man. Like it makes so much sense that this I don't even want to say small portion, because it's obviously not a small portion if 80% of your results come from this thing. But if 80% of what you get comes from 20% of what you do, why would you not maximize that and use it in the most productive way possible? And then too, like we were talking about earlier, like your energy, regardless of whoever or how prideful or whatever we want to be, your energy, your willpower, your mental stamina, these things are limited, and you have to find the way that you can use these resources in the most productive way possible. This is another reason that I say things like social media can be really good for us, right? It can help us, network and grow businesses and that kind of thing. But one thing I don't like about social media is the fact that almost everything that's on there is like a highlight reel from somebody else's life. We all put the best part of our lives on there and all this kind of thing. And what that's done, in addition to many other things, but what it's done for things like entrepreneurship and fitness, things like goal setting, it's made it seem like it's an overnight thing. And so people try to do this thing and they realize it's not an overnight thing. It takes effort to do this. And so what we want to do then is we say, oh, well, this person did it and it worked out for them. I'm doing it. It's not working for me. Maybe it's not meant for me. But the reason I bring that up is because we start to compare ourselves to other people through social media based on what they're doing, their business, whatever it is. And that takes us away from kind of what we're talking about here, which is basically like figuring out for yourself, what is it for yourself that works? Like, what is the system for you? Because some people might be okay doing the 12, 14, 16-hour days. Some people might be able to, like, can only do 8, and then they have to stop and then do something else to kind of recharge or whatever it is, and it's not saying that the people who do 12 or 14 or 16 are better. And it's also saying they're not even going to get farther than you do if you do 8, because I feel like if you have a system set for yourself, whether it's 8 or 4 or whatever it is, if you have a system set for yourself and you know what you're doing, you are probably going to be more consistent than the person who's pushing themselves past their limit anyways. So even if it looks like they're doing more, you're going to be the one that's more consistent. And like 4 hours 7 days a week is better than 16 hours 1 day a week. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's that consistency that's going to get you where you need to be over time.
100%. I made a video once talking about how the fastest way to do things was the slow way. And that sounds very weird. But what I mean by that is fast is very, very the fast way, which I think is the bad way, is what we see everywhere today, right? Want to lose weight? Well, cool, you can lose 40 pounds in 13 days by eating this herb
Yep.
from Kenya. You want to build a business? Cool, have a 7-figure business within 10 days. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you want to build a dating life? Cool, you'll have 30 Tinder dates within, by the end of the week. Everything is so fast, 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 fast. Problem is, then you try this diet, right, that promises you all kinds of crazy fast results, and then it lasts for 12 minutes, and then you collapse, or maybe you
Yep.
actually do it for a couple of days, maybe you even see a little bit of results, but then you mess it up. And not because you're a bad person or because you're weak, but because the system was just ridiculously absurd, right? It was not meant to be sustainable. Someone who's been eating McDonald's for the first 40 years of her life now tries to go on a cucumber and lemon water diet. It's like
Yep.
obviously that's not gonna work. Like, obviously that's not gonna work, and it's the fast way. But what happens then? And I've had clients like this, Dave. And I'm not a fitness or nutrition coach, but oftentimes I like taking, drawing from my fitness experiences and sprinkling what I do with some of those experiences, right? So, and she's been doing the fast way for 30 years. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, she would try a diet that promised all kinds of crazy fast results. She would not get the results, or she would get them and then immediately mess it up. And then she would be disappointed. And then maybe 4 months later or 7 months later, whatever, she'd try again. And that was the cycle that she'd been on for 30 years. And she had not lost weight, even though it was the fast way, and it's now 30 years past. Then we tried my way, the slow way, and it just, I think it was 9 months she had lost like just about all the kilos. I think it was like 17 kilos or something like that. But she was already very, like, she wasn't like super fat or anything. She just wanted to lose that, and she did. Well, like 9 months, and it was completely sustainable. And that was years ago. And when I talk to her now, it's just working. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I say the slow route is the fastest one, and that's because slow is steady and steady is fast. Now we're back to consistency, stuff like that, like you just touched upon. So that's why I'm so big on, first of all, clarity, which I would love to talk about as well. And then once we have this clarity, we know exactly what it is we're trying to build. Then we build systems that consistently and effectively and sustainably move us toward that. I call it bridge the gap activities, because it's activities that bridge the gap between where we are and where we would like to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with starting small. I'm okay with like really just having a small first step, just so that we get the ball rolling and so that it actually becomes a system. And then, which again I would love to talk about if you want to do that. The easiest thing in the world is taking a habit or a system that is ingrained in you and then scaling it. Like, that's the easiest thing in the world. If you've read 10 pages of a good book every night for the last 40 days, you could probably read 12 pages as well. You could probably read 15 if you wanted to. And if you've done 15 pages per night for 30 days in a row, you could probably read 20 pages per day, right? So it's very, very easy to scale a habit, scale a system. The tricky part is building it in the first place. So that's why I'm okay with starting really, really small, and then we go to slow way, and with time we just make these systems so ingrained in us, and we scale them, and we ride the momentum, and then we just see consistently every day we go to bed, all of these systems have worked for us,
Yep.
and we're now closer to everything we want in every area of life, just about, compared to when we woke up today. That's my ideal. That's my objective with every client.
I love that, man, and we'll definitely touch on that. I want to say this before we move too far away from what we were talking about. The easy, the quick fix, the easy way out. I mean, we could talk about like immediate gratification and how dangerous that is for everybody, but I think especially for men. This immediate gratification thing, whether it's the whatever insert whatever easy way it is. But this is why I think this is one of the reasons that I think this is so bad for us. This easy way out, this quick fix, is because it, like, first of all, these solutions hardly ever exist. Like, there might be a quick fix to weight loss or business or whatever it is, and they hardly ever work or exist. But I think that the bad part about it is it skips the process of building whatever that thing is, whether it's a fitness plan or a business or whatever. And the reason that's bad is because when you skip the process, like, just think about this from a fitness standpoint. I think this is the easiest example for people to understand. Think about it from a fitness standpoint. If you have never been to the gym, if you've never worked out, most people will probably not go to the gym, go to the bench press and try to bench press their own body weight to start with. You probably would not do that. I mean, maybe you would, I don't know. But what you probably do is you would probably work up to that point. Let's use another example. Let's say that you want to start a business or whatever. If you've never had a business before, if it's your first day in business, you are probably not going to be able to manage and operate a 6 or 7 figure business right out the gate. You're probably not going to be able to. You have to work up to that point. So this is the thing about skipping the process, man. We can look at the end goal and we can say, this is where I want to be in life. This is what I want to have. This is the things I want to have in my life. But it's like, are you the person that can handle that kind of thing? Because what you're probably going to, the thing about the process is it builds you and molds you into the person who can achieve these things. That's why, like, skipping the process, man, like, you hear people who like hit the lottery and then the next year they're back in the same place financially than they were to begin with. Or you talk about these people, like in your experience, these people who try to do this fitness thing, it might work for a couple weeks or a month and then they're kind of back to the same thing because we skip that process. We skip the ladder that it takes to climb to the position we want to be, and we just try to jump to the position, and we're not the person who is able to handle these things. I mean, just think about it, and I'm not asking you to elaborate on this, just think about it in your personal situation. If you, that 16, 17, 18-year-old person that you were when you were having this conversation with your friends, if you had everything that you had now and somebody just magically gave it to you then, do you think you would be the person that could handle it? I know in my situation, I would definitely not be, man. If somebody could just magically give me the things that I have now and the whatever the knowledge or whatever that I have now to who I was when I was first started this thing, I don't think I would be able to handle it. I wouldn't be able to handle myself or, whatever the case was, because it is the process that builds us into the person who can do these things. And this is another reason that I tell people too, I understand having a goal. I understand having an end goal, having a target that you want to get hit. I get all that. That's very important. But I think we get so focused on the goal and the target. Like, we do not focus on becoming the person who can achieve that target. It sounds so crazy, man, because it is the process that builds us into that person that is in that position. Because if you skip the process, then you skip the entire thing about building yourself up to be the person that can take on these things.
100%. So much I want to touch on there. I listened to a podcast recently where someone said something pretty cool. I think it was the guest that asked the host for some of his early jobs, right? And he said, well, first I was in government administration or something, and then I was a sales manager. And then he asked him, okay, when you were when you were a government administrator, did you have the privileges of someone who was in government administration? And he said, yeah, of course I did. I had the office, I had the title, I had the meetings, I had all of that. And the guest asked him, cool, did you have the privileges of being a sales manager when you were a sales manager? And he said, yeah, obviously I had the sales team and all that. Cool. And then he asked him, which was what blew my mind. He asked, "Now, did you have the
Daniel,
privileges?"
hang
Yeah,
on, Daniel. Can you hear me?
yeah,
Hang on, just for a second. I got a camera issue. Let me solve this just real quick.
no problem.
So I'll let you, if you kind of want to pick back up wherever you want to pick up.
Absolutely.
You know,
All right, so I listened to this podcast where the guest asked the host for some of his earlier jobs, and the host said, "Well, first I was doing government administration, and then I was a sales manager afterwards." And then the guest asked him, "Cool, did you have when you were in government administration? Did you have the privileges of someone who works in government administration? Did you have the office and the title and the colleagues and the meetings and all of that?" And he said, "Yeah, of course I did." "Okay, when you were a sales manager, did you have the privileges of being a sales manager?" "Yeah, I did. I had the office and I had the things that you get when you're a sales manager." "Nice. Now, when you were a sales manager, did you have the privileges of being in government administration?" And he said, "No, I didn't." And his point was that much of what we get in life is who we are. You know, what are we attracting? What are we capable of? What is our position? And that's what you're talking about as well. These people that win the lottery, almost always, for some reason, they go broke within a couple of years. Well, because they are not the kind of person that has $100 million or $10 million
yep,
or whatever. They can handle it. They don't know. And in some ways, it's the same thing with people that have surgery and stuff like that to lose weight. Sometimes they put on weight again. Sometimes it works. Anyway, oftentimes a lot of people that have fast results, they're not the kind of person that can hold those results. And
hmm
that's what you were talking about as well. And also, just to circle back, just to go full circle on some of the things we talked about um, earlier about relying on motivation and willpower. That's exactly what the fast route does, right? It relies on motivation because now it's January 2nd, and I need to be healthy and New Year's resolutions and everything, right? So motivation, and then you're trying to power through what feels like hell because you're going from a full diet of McDonald's to a full diet of vegetables. So you're using the willpower to kind of power through. So that's exactly the two things that we talked about that we don't want to rely on. That's what the fast route relies on. So another reason for it not to, not to be optimal. Yeah.
right. So earlier you mentioned something about clarity, and what was the other word that you used? It was clarity, and what else you said you wanted to touch on?
Perhaps that was
Understanding, maybe.
momentum, or
Yeah, I think so. Maybe. I think what you were talking about was just kind of being clear with maybe where you want to go, or what you want to do. Because you
absolutely,
mentioned a couple times about clarity, and I feel like just from talking to you, I feel like you're a person who has a very clear. Uh, I don't want to say vision because that kind of sounds different from what we're talking about here, but just a very clear sort of direction for yourself. I feel like.
absolutely. Clarity is huge, and it's probably 70 or 80% of what I do with clients, and it's the main thing I talk about when I'm on media, when I'm on podcasts, stuff like this. So I'm actually surprised I haven't talked about it yet with you, but I just think clarity is so important. And what I mean by that is what I will do with, let's say I'm with a client, we'll identify what are your values. And this sounds very vague. I promise it's going to get very specific and very tangible. But what are your values? For some people, they may value freedom, whereas for other people, they may value security and comfort. Those are two very different things, freedom and
Right.
security, very different. And so once people know what their values are, for me, that may be confidence, maybe freedom, maybe impact, maybe health, and then we have these values, and the way I view them, I call them pillars.
Hmm.
Or maybe they're your life is a tabletop, and then these values are the legs of the table. But I call them pillars. These values, very important to get clear on these. And then what you want to do, or what you can do, what I encourage people to do, is you can dive even further, and you can say, okay, there's this one value here, confidence, and then we dive deeper into what I call the layers of the values, which is what is confidence to me. So that may be me doing my best at work. When I'm doing my best at work and I'm putting my effort in and I feel like I'm doing well, that makes me confident. It's also my appearance, maybe how I look. That could be my physique, the way I look, my the way I dress. And the third thing could be how am I performing socially? Am I seeing my friends? How am I viewed socially? Whatever it may be, right? This is an example. You can dive deeper into these values, and then very often, if not always, if your life as the tabletop is not how you want it to be, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe you're freaked out, maybe you're sad. I know there's clinical depression, but a lot of depression will be because of this as well. When these values are not aligned, if you value freedom and you have none, you will feel bad. If you value confidence, but you have no confidence, but you have no self-worth and no confidence, and you don't like yourself, then obviously that's going to impact the tabletop. So get really clear on these values, and then get really clear on the layers of these values, and then we identify the weak link, right? So now you have this huge kind of web almost of your values and the layers of the values, and you can see which ones are you performing well in. So let's say I've decided that of my main values, confidence is the one I'm struggling with. Then I'll dive deeper and I'll see, okay, actually I am doing what I can socially. I like how I'm performing socially, and also I like how I look. So the problem is I'm not doing my best at work, right? So then now you've kind of gone from my life sucks to, okay, I am not performing how I want to be performing in this one value, and that's because of this one layer of the value, right? So now we know, okay, this is something we should work on, and that's what we build the systems around. So I pick one of these, I pick one thing I want to improve on, or my client wants to improve on, and then we find some of these high reward per effort activities. And I'm not an expert on anything, on everything, right? I'm not an expert on everything in life. So this is where the client will help me. Let's say he wants to do more weightlifting. I'm not gonna go in and pretend I'm the best weightlifter in the world. So that's when he can. It's not difficult to find some of these high reward per effort activities. It's literally just Googling, like exercises for a bigger breast, right? So these activities in and of itself are not difficult to find. It's the implementation of them, which is what I'm helping with. So we have more information than we've ever had. The information is there. So I don't need to be an expert on the piano and on diet and on all these things, because we can very quickly find the information on Google. The hard thing is implementation. Now, I know obviously that you can't always trust Google, and there's some information that's better than others, whatever. But we'll work together, the client and I, to find these high reward per effort activities. And then that's what we build the system around. So let's say it's weightlifting. So maybe you have a client who's not, he's an entrepreneur doing well in business, but he's not happy and he's stressed. Cool. Turns out it's the health value that's lacking, and it turns out he's not, he feels small and weak, and he wants to build muscle mass. So that's the thing he wants to do to essentially improve his life. We'll find the high reward per effort activity, which is weightlifting, and we'll figure out the exercises that aligns with what it's trying to do, and we build the system. So what is a system? Well, I can tell you what's not a system. What's not a system is saying, I go to the gym when I feel like it, when I have the energy, and when the stars are aligned and everything is perfect. That's when I go to the gym. I've seen people do that for 10 years and not progress barely at all.
Yep.
The people that do kill it at the gym are the people that say something like, I lift weights for 45 minutes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on my way home from work. That's a system. That's a system. And once you have that and you're doing 45 minutes, it's the easiest thing in the world doing 50 minutes instead, or 55 minutes if that's what you want to do. But having the system, I've seen guys and women progress more with their fitness in months by having a system, even if it's only 3 times a week they're doing it, compared to people that do it whenever they feel like it and whenever the stars are aligned. And then as you may remember, in the beginning of the podcast, I said there is a time and place for willpower. I don't want to rely on it too much, but there is a time and place. And that is in the very beginning of automating these systems. So if you've never gone to the gym, or even if you have, and you've now been with me, and we've decided that the approach for you is this system. Let's say it's the weightlifting after work 3 days a week. That is going to require a little bit of willpower. That is going to require a little bit of willpower until it becomes habit, until it becomes a part of you, until it's routine, until it's systematic, until it's to the point where I can ask you, how much do I need to pay you to not go to the gym on Monday, just one time? And he says a really high number, because it would completely put his schedule out of whack, because it's so ingrained in him now. Once we get to that point, we now have a system in place that is automated. We know it's high reward per effort. We know it's sustainable. And we know that every single time this system happens, he's getting closer to having more muscle mass, which means he's closer to having a higher perceived feeling of health, which means he's getting closer to having the life that he wants, which is less stress and more happiness, more fulfillment, more excitement, all of that. Now, that is very powerful. That is very, very powerful. Something just happening every single day, or in this case, 3 times per week, that you know automatically moves you towards your ideal life. That's very powerful. Now what you can do, you have 2 choices. You can either scale this system, right? You can decide to do an hour instead of 45 minutes. You can decide to push harder when you are at the gym. You can decide to do 4 times per week instead of 3. You can scale the system, which is actually not that hard. If you've done 3 times 45 minutes every week for the last 4 months, and you decide to scale that to an hour, it's actually not that difficult. The difficult part is, first of all, getting clear on exactly what you want, and then getting started with the system. Once you have that, it's easy to scale. Another thing you can do is you can say, okay, this system is in place, it's how I want it. I now go back to my large web, or my vision, or my image of my ideal life, whatever you call it, and I pick the next weak link. That may be something completely different. That may also be health, but it can also be in your perceived feeling of freedom, or it can be in your relationships, or whatever. You pick the next worst thing, the weakest link, and then you build the next system. So if you can imagine how powerful it is to have a system like this, where it just automatically just happens. Imagine having 20 of those, right? So that's what I do for myself. It's what I do for everyone who I love, my family, my friends. Well, the ones that actually want my help, right? Some people are not too much into personal growth, or maybe they're old and skeptical or whatever. But the people that want my help, and then of course my clients whom I work with, this is what we do. We basically design systems that make it so that on autopilot, I don't like the word autopilot because it becomes a little bit gimmicky, but honestly, it can feel like autopilot. You move forward with everything that matters to you, without the decisions, without the 100 fights. Maybe you'll have 0 fights some days, where everything just happens. To me, it's so beautiful. I really, really love it when it works, which it always does, because it's the only thing that's difficult is if people don't get started with the system. But the trick there is there are no laws against starting smaller.
Right.
So we can get into that, but I'm gonna let you talk. I'm talking an awful lot.
No, I got it, man. So first of all, I just want to say this sounds like a very powerful system because I feel like the power and the importance of systems go unnoticed. I don't feel like people think about systems the way maybe we should. Um, I mean, it's like if you look at any huge company, any major company, or any small company, if they operate successfully, there are successful systems in place. Like that's how these things work. And so I can, when we talk about, doing this one thing, developing a system for that, and then having a system where you build systems together, this thing just compounds over time. I want to backtrack though, and I know you mentioned a little bit about this when it comes to, because I feel like this is a big problem for a lot of people when it comes to like identifying the actual pillars themselves. I feel like that's going to be a big issue for a lot of people because I know you talked about this, but like, so say use your example, the confidence, the self-confidence one. Man, that can be so many different things. When like if we have a self-confidence pillar or issue that we want to improve, I mean, that can be so many different things, and the source of that can come from who knows where. I mean, there's so many different places that can come from. So when you talk to your clients, or maybe just like in general, how do you think, like, where's a good starting point to identify like the pillars that we have for ourselves, that maybe they're the weaker ones, maybe they're the stronger ones? Because I think that's what, I think one of these things that kind of keep a lot of us from starting anything is it just seems so overwhelming at the start. We know there's things we have to do, and we look at the entire staircase instead of maybe like the first step. So what do you think, like, just in your opinion, what do you think is like the best way to just identify the pillars to begin with, and say, just try to say, hey, I need some focus in this area. This area is okay. I mean, what's your idea on that?
Absolutely. So I will be honest. The clarity part is by far the hardest part. 100%.
Mm.
When I'm working with a client, man, once we're over that and we actually have the big web, the big vision there, everything is child's play. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm not trying to that's the tricky part. But there are certainly ways, and now after doing it with so many people, we're starting to see what helps people and what doesn't. So first of all, it's helpful if the client has some suggestions, but also some mandatory ones, right? So maybe
Mm-hmm.
if I say to a client we should find 6 or 5 or 7 or whatever, maybe some of them I put in there that either I know for a fact that just about every person needs, or it's something I'm guessing it means a lot to him, right? So some kind of
Mm-hmm.
starting point is really good against overwhelm. That's one thing. And then another thing that's great is questions. I use that a lot. So I'll ask my client a lot of questions, and if you just have my PDF or my ebook or something like that, the questions will be in there as well. But I also have a ton of free content on it, so it's not that you only get my questions if you're working one-on-one. There are many ways to these questions, but also you can ask yourself questions. Questions are really, really powerful. I'm gonna go on a little weird tangent here, and then I'll circle back. But questions are really powerful. If I asked you right now what 4 plus 4 equals,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping you would say 8. I'm hoping that's the answer you would give me, right? Why didn't you say 9? Why didn't you say 5? Nothing wrong with those answers either, except for the question that I asked. The answer is 8. So I'm the reason that I received 8 from you, because if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted the answer 9, I should have asked a different question. And it's the same thing with Google. Right now, if I'm Googling a pink banana, right, there will be a pink banana. Now, does that mean that they don't have mangoes on Google? They don't have pictures of mangoes? They do. It's just that the question that I asked was searching for something else, and that was what was
Mm-hmm.
being answered. And that's the same thing in life, man. If you're asking yourself things like, which I did a lot back when I was depressed, I would ask myself terrible questions. I'd be on the beach, and I remember this like it was yesterday. I saw two young women. They were laughing, and they were like a long way from me. It had nothing to do with me. But immediately I asked myself, why are they laughing at me? Now, my brain may have a ton of information. Maybe it even has information on, maybe they even have information that tells me they're not laughing at me, right? But right now I'm asking, why are they laughing at me? That's the question I want my brain to answer. So my brain will find answers to that and say, well, maybe you look weird right now. Maybe your hair's messy, or maybe you dropped some ice cream on your chest, or whatever, right? Like it'll try and come up with answers. And then maybe I could go further and I could say, well, why do I always drop things? And then go further and say, well, why do I always fail in life? And then for some reason you went from seeing two women smile and having a good time to, why am I a loser and why should I not be here anymore? And then that's just the question you answer. But if you turn that around and instead you ask yourself questions that you would really like the answer to, like maybe you can ask big, broad questions like, what are my values? Right? Maybe when you're on the bus or in the car and you're sitting in the garden or whatever, just ask yourself a bunch of questions, And if you can't answer what are my values, then you could ask yourself, well, do I value freedom or security more? How important is confidence to me on a scale from 1 to 10? Is there a difference between who I am when I'm social versus when I'm alone? So just ask yourself all these questions, and then maybe you answer them, maybe you don't, but definitely think about the answers to those questions. I think so. Definitely dialing in what kind of questions you're asking yourself is something that really changed my life, and it's a huge part of figuring out what your values are. I think if you ask yourself these questions, or you're working with someone like me, I'll probably ask one of those questions as well, then it's not impossible to get clear on what your values are. In fact, eventually you will, in just about all cases. And then you asked afterwards, once you have these values, how do you identify which one of those are the weak link, which one of those you're not performing well in? That one is easier. That one is a lot easier, because what I'll do there is I will have these values that we have established. So let's say that's confidence, and then also we've dive deeper into the layers of confidence. So I know, okay, what makes me confident is doing my best at work, and it's how I look, and it's how I perform socially. Those are the three main ingredients for my confidence. Then I will do what I call the magic wand experience, the magic wand exercise, excuse me, which is, okay, this thing right here. So let's say that's, how well am I doing at work, or how do I look? If you could wave a magic wand and you could have it exactly how you wanted it, what would that look like from a scale from 1 to 10? And also try and describe what that actually would look like. And then some people will say, well, then wouldn't I just say 10 on everything? Well, not really. Like, I don't need to be the best Muay Thai fighter in the world. Like, for me to have my ideal life, that's perfectly fine with me being a 7 or an 8. Like, my life, because I'm only doing it as a hobby, changes in no way in quality of life if I'm ranked top 5 in my city versus if I'm ranked top 60 in my city. It doesn't matter to me. So I would put 7 or 8 on that. So you're not going to say 10 on everything. But then once you have an idea of what you would want, for no pun intended, for these values, if you had a magic wand, then it gets very clear. Okay, this value right here, I would like that to be a 9, but I'm currently at 2. Versus this one over here, I would like that to be an 8, and I'm currently a 7. Then I would, in most cases, work on the 2 to 9 first. So that one is easier, but the trickiest part absolutely is the first part of getting clear on your values. Absolutely.
I like that, man. What's your opinion on, you hear people say things like you should not focus on things you're bad at. You should zero in on things you're good at. like what when you were talking about this and you were saying like you would be okay in a 7 or 8 out of this area, that kind of made me think of that. And I'm just curious because going back to our earlier conversation about how you have limited resources, you have limited willpower and that kind of thing. I don't think you can. I am all about improving every aspect of your life, but like when it comes to something that you're not good at versus something that you are good at, and I guess it kind of depends on like what you're using that attribute for, like where are you going with that. But what's your thoughts on that? Like, because some people, like I said, some people say you should improve areas that you're bad at. Some people say you should focus in and zero in on things that you're good at. For example, let's say that you have a goal or whatever, and it's a business, it's a fitness plan, whatever it is, and you say that there's okay, well let's just say fitness. If you're looking at like these sort of like let's just take general personal growth pillars, communication, like public speaking may be one thing, discipline, all these other kind of things. Well, the public speaking might be irrelevant if you're just trying to be the best fitness, if you're trying to be an extreme level bodybuilder, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what I'm asking. Like, should it just be, well, I don't want to answer the question for you, but I'm just curious if it should be like maybe kind of relevant to where you're going, because you brought up a good point with the Muay Thai thing, um, because to be a 10 on that is going to take a lot of physical and mental resources,
Exactly. So do I think we should focus in on our strengths and then 100%? But I do think there's a difference. I think there's an important distinction here to make. I think when I'm running my company and I need some custom code on my website, the old me would jump on YouTube, spend 50 hours trying to learn how to fix it, and then do it. Now what I'm doing is I go on Fiverr or Upwork or whatever. I hire a programmer. He does it immediately. I pay him. I don't think about it. So like it would not make sense for me to learn some programming, and then I
Right.
also need to learn Facebook ads, and I also need to be absolutely. I would not. For me though, I feel like those are more skills. I have it the same thing in my personal life. I play the piano, and when I say play the piano, I mean I play it, but it doesn't sound great. And I play it maybe
Right.
5 minutes per month. I'm reminded. Oh, right, I have a piano. I go there a little bit and I move on. It doesn't make sense for me to be the best in the world at piano. I play chess. I study some Spanish or whatever, but I'm very very clear with myself that these are not things. I cannot be the best in the world at all of these things.
Right.
And there's a quote that says you can do and be anything, but you can't do and be everything. And I love that. I love that. So the majority of my focus is business, weightlifting, my girlfriend, and family. But I think there's a difference between diversifying your focus on strengths and weaknesses like that versus in your life making sure that you have your values ticked in. So I think you can absolutely have a life where you can be confident and be healthy and have a high impact in your career and have loving relationships. I absolutely don't think you should go, and I'm not saying this is what you're saying, by the way, but I'm not saying you should say, well, I'll go all in on being confident and then I'll have to forget everything about being healthy and having relationships and all of that. Or saying
Right.
I'll be healthy but then I'll forget it. So I think for values you can do all of it. Also because very often it doesn't take more time. So if you're, let's say a value of yours is freedom, it takes the same amount of energy and time and effort to live in a way that doesn't have the freedom versus living in a way that has it. Maybe it even takes more effort to not have it than to have it. So great question, and I absolutely love the idea of focusing on what you're good at and then maximizing that. Otherwise you're not going to be great at anything. But for your values, I would like there for not to be a massive like sore thumb or a massive weak link, because often one of these values that's not doing well can be enough for you to land in depression and anxiety and stress and unhappiness and all of that. So that's why we go with the wiggling approach for that. But I wouldn't do it in a high performance scenario for skills and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. So Daniel, look, I didn't realize it was it's almost 12:30 where I am. I got to get off to another call here in a couple minutes. But I want to make sure we close the loop on this first. So we were talking about identifying these values, these pillars, and then you talk about implementation of these systems. What do you think? Like, what would be advice on like maintaining these systems? Because we don't want to build we don't want to build this thing and then not be able to maintain it. So what would be your advice? As far as like once we get everything figured out, we figure out our weak areas, our strengths, and we get kind of a system in place, and we're doing this thing. What's your advice on maybe kind of maintaining that?
Oh man, I'll try to do that very short. Otherwise, we'll have to we'll have to do a round two and this some other time, because the next step
Okay.
in our system, after you have built these systems and that's the entire momentum part, where I
Mm-hmm.
talk about we scale the momentum and how to protect it. How to protect momentum. A big part of that is to avoid temptation. So, for example, if you're a sobering alcoholic, obviously you want to protect yourself against having a drink, because that would
Right.
kill what you're trying to do. And then we would put kind of, I call them, what do I call them actually? I think I call them temptation killer plan or whatever, something like that, where you put in place certain plans to make sure that you don't hit those temptations. And then the last thing for that is it's okay to reset momentum sometimes. For example, here with the Christmas holidays, I decided to reset my momentum, basically stop many of the systems that I had, for example, with my work. But I did it in a way where I knew once January 2nd hits, I hit the ground running and I'm right back where I left. That's the tricky thing to do. But when you
Yep.
do these resets correctly, it's actually not a problem to make these resets. So yeah, protect your momentum, and if you do need to reset it, let's say you're going on a vacation or whatever, plan for how you're going to get back into the system. Don't just go on vacation and then once you're back home, okay, now I guess I should start working out again, because now you're completely out of the mode, out of the momentum, anything. So plan for it while you're in motion, while you're in momentum, while you're
Mm-hmm.
killing it. Plan for how you're going to get back in. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I think that part is critical, man. We talked about earlier about figuring out how many hours a day you can work, whatever that is. I think it makes a big difference when you tell yourself, "Hey, I'm going to take this break at this day for however long," versus just taking a break just because it gets tough, it gets hard. I think those are two completely different things. Um,
100%.
and I've talked too, before about giving yourself a break from the gym or whatever it is. People say, like, when I say that, people are like, "Oh well, I would never want to go back," or whatever. But it's like, man, if you do that, if you give yourself a couple days off, a week off, whatever it is, every couple months, like, you would be surprised towards the end of that period, that week, it's like you're ready to get back. You're ready to get back to it. And I think it's because you basically gave yourself that break instead of just taking that break when it felt hard. And I can't stress how important that is for you to decide that you're going to do that versus it deciding for you.
The break becomes strategic. It's a tactical
Right.
move. It's something that there's intention behind. It's not just I give up, or I'm not strong enough for this or whatever. It's you making a decision. This is the best for me and my project overall. Is this break right
Yep.
here? Yeah.
Yep. So, Daniel, I've really appreciated the conversation today, man. Do you have anything that you want to share while you're here, social media or website or anything?
Absolutely. So the main thing is our company website, which is passion and then the number 4 achievement.com. So passionforachievement.com. And on there there's going to be a 100% free PDF. I think it's called the 7 pillars of a world-class life. It's, like I talked about, a starting point for people to find these values, and I give some suggestions on what it could be, and then you can edit some of it if you want to. But it's a very very good starting point for this clarity thing, and it's 100% free. There's no email opt-in. There's no nothing. It's literally just download, enjoy, and yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Are there any topics that we didn't touch on that maybe you wanted to? I know we only have a little bit left here, but if there are, you're right. We might have to do a part 2 to this thing.
I would love a round 2. I think there's a gazillion things we could talk about,
Okay.
and yeah.
Well, sure. Maybe we'll save it for next time. Then we'll get in touch with each other and figure out what we didn't talk about here. We covered a lot, man. But when we're talking about conversations like this, covering topics like this, man, it's just like the time. Like we've talked probably close to 2 hours now, and it seems like it seems like it hasn't been that long. We just condensed a lot of information into the time, But so one thing I want to ask you before we close out, this is something I kind of ask everybody. If you had to kind of identify or pinpoint one of the most important lessons you've ever learned from your life, it can be related to fitness or business, your personal life, if it's something you're comfortable sharing, what would you say is one of the most important things you've ever learned?
When I was young and I saw successful people, whatever that meant for child Daniel, I think that was probably just famous people. But whenever I saw people on TV or big musicians or CEOs or whatever, I always figured they were born that way, and I'm not. I figured they were born in a way that's different to the way I'm born. They're successful, I'm not. They've always been
Hmm.
successful, and I will never be, because I grew up in a family where no one really had any career ambitions or anything like that. Nothing bad against my family, but they just didn't want it. So I thought, I have my lot in life. I have something I can do, and I have some things I can't do. It turns out you can absolutely do the things that you think you can't do. Like you can absolutely build a big company or become the singer or whatever. I know there are limitations to whatever, but one thing I've learned in life is if you're clear on what it is that you want and you go after it, you will be surprised what is possible. And then once you hit that, you'll go for even more, and then even more, and then even more, and then eventually you'll look up and you'll go, I had no idea that even a tenth of this was possible. And but it is, I promise. And it's in your control for the most part.
I love that answer, man, because I feel like when we see these celebrities or quote unquote famous people or quote unquote successful people, I think that we think sometimes they have things that we don't, that we put these people on a pedestal, and it's like, these people are capable of this and I'm not, but it's like, they're just people, these people are like anybody that any famous person or anybody that is a person and not like a god or a spiritual being, any person that you look at and you idolize or you admire or whatever it is, like they're just people, man. They're just people just like you. And they wake up in the morning and they go to sleep at night. And throughout the day, they have faults just like you do. They have mistakes in their life just like you do. They have, self-limiting beliefs and thoughts just like you do. Although obviously maybe they have those somewhat under control if they're at that level of success. But it's just like, I love the way you word that, because it's so important for us to just realize that these are just people who are just living their life based on like goals or ambitions they have set for themselves. And it's like, I think when you understand that, it puts it into perspective that you are capable of doing that also. And we could tie this in, man, to what we talked about earlier, this like giving ourselves this excuse of like, oh, well, whatever, famous football player, well, this person has talent that I don't have. Obviously, I can't do this. But I mean, at some point, man, that person was also a person who looked up to these famous people. At some point in their life before they got to where they're at, they also looked at people that are where they at or where they're currently at. So I love that answer, man. I think that really summarizes that. And also too, I'd like your thought process on a lot of things, man. I like the way you see things. There's a couple of things we've talked about here today that I've never really thought about, like the 100 fights per day. I think that's a real takeaway from this conversation. I've never thought about having those, having so many different battles with yourself, because you're right, it's not sustainable, for anybody. And so yeah, I like the thought process. I like the mindset. Mindset is something that I speak about a lot, and maybe we'll save that one for next time, because that's a whole nother rabbit hole, man. But listen, man, I appreciate your time. Appreciate your time here, and we'll definitely do this again. get on the other topics that we didn't hit on today, and we'll see we'll see how it goes.
Sure thing, man. Thanks for having me. This was incredible. I really liked that talk.
Hey, listen, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it useful or beneficial, you can subscribe, follow, interact, and see more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is all social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google and Apple Podcasts. Again, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.